Netflix reported earnings, and it's time to talk about them. Now, Netflix is a company that I've historically not been the biggest bull on, particularly because I don't believe they are a tech company. I believe they're a media company, and I believe they are being traded by the market as a tech company with tech multiples for a company that buys content, delivers it to consumers, and gets subscriptions on top of that. Is there technology involved? Obviously. Are there some algorithms? Obviously. But tech is user-generated content, curating that user-generated content, and then being able to build incredibly strong recommendation algorithms on top of that user-generated content. That's not all tech companies, but that's at least tech companies in the content space. Netflix is a media company. And at the end of the day, if they cannot produce or buy the best media, their content dies and their subscriber base dies. Now, Netflix had a pretty good quarter. We're going to get into some of the numbers here. But one of the things I didn't like about Netflix is that their business model is contingent upon spending a lot for subscribers. They got 8.9 million subscribers in the new year. However, if you look at the interest, or if you look at the cash flow statement, they spent $2.5 billion in marketing to get $8.9 million in net new subscribers, which means they spent $284 per net new subscriber. And this is from Wasteland Capital, a great Twitter account that pointed out this analysis. Now, what does this mean? Spending $2.5 billion on 8.9 million new subscribers. Everyone liked the earnings because people were like, oh my goodness, 8.9 million new subs. That's almost 9 million new people in the quarter. That's great. The question is, how profitable are those consumers, or are those subscribers, on a lifetime value LTV basis based on the CAC, the customer acquisition cost you spent for them? So let's break down the numbers kind of simply here. $284 per net new customer, assuming at the most basic level that all of these let's just use 9 million to make it easier. 9 million subscribers are paying $16 a month. So 9 million, which we'll talk about why that's not happening, but 9 million times $16, which I believe is the highest tier of Netflix. That means it's $144 million of revenue. Now, they spent $2.53 billion. So if we just simply do $2.53 billion, in fact, let's just ask Siri. Siri, what's $2.53 billion divided by $144 million? 17. That means it would take about a year and a half to break even on all of these subscribers, assuming they pay every single month and assuming they stay for all 17 months and there's zero churn. Now, there's a problem with this. Most of these subscribers, I would argue, and I haven't gone into the nitty-gritty details, but it's just common sense, are not paying $16 a month. Many of them are paying for ads, which is about $6, $7 a month, and many of them are international, which is because the US and North American markets, it's saturated. Now, we'll talk about the counter-argument for why it's not saturated, but a lot of people, I mean, who do you know that really doesn't have a Netflix account, at least in North America and Canada and some parts of Europe? A lot of those people are being subsidized. It's the same thing that Spotify does. It costs like $2 a month to get Spotify in India, and Netflix, it costs maybe $4 or $5 a month, but it's obviously a little bit more in their currencies in India. Now, the problem with that is that that's not a profitable business. People can't be paying $4 a month and get access to all the content in the world because the amount you pay to make the content does not justify $4 a month. This is what a growth company does. They subsidize the cost and they will charge you more in the back end after you've enjoyed the service and you've stuck onto the service for many years. And that's all fine and dandy. The question becomes, will you stay on the service for many years? And I've noticed this myself with Spotify. Spotify gave me a $5 per month Hulu and Spotify bundle for 4 years of college. I mean, there was no way any artists were getting paid for my streams because my $5 a month was not feeding any of the artists that I was streaming constantly. And unfortunately, that was the nature of their business model. As soon as I got out of college, I realized then they tried to charge me $10 a month. It just wasn't sticky enough for me to stay. At the end of the day, it's just music. I can listen to music anywhere. In fact, YouTube Premium gets the job done, and I get no ads on video, and I get free music for another $2 a month. That's a hell of a better deal than paying $10 a month for Spotify because I get some nice user interface. And YouTube's UI is not that bad either for YouTube Music. So at that point, I left the service. The question becomes, how much content can Netflix actually produce in order to sustain the level of growth they had? Let's take a look at Jim Cramer and why he is bullish on Netflix to get a little bit of a counter perspective here.
The stock of Netflix soared more than 8% today in response to a much better than expected quarter. But the thing everyone's getting wrong is what made this quarter so good. We keep hearing this reported as a subscriber growth story. And those numbers, admittedly, were phenomenal. But the real game changer wasn't subscriber. It was the fabulous, bountiful cash flow. Because Netflix has made tremendous strides in its pivot to profitability. You know how much we care about that. It'll make money. I didn't hear a soul say it, though, because the times were indeed great. But it's the truth. So let me do this. Let me walk you through this one because the smallest of the fangs is the one that's broken away from the pack to become a true winner during this period. And these results show you how they pulled it off. First, let's go over the numbers. The headline results weren't anything special, with basically inline revenue and what looked at first glance to be a earnings shortfall. Company made 12 cents per share. Wall Street was only looking for 55 cents. 12 cents, 55. Holy cow! But there's an explanation for that. Netflix took a 36-cent per share cash charge during the quarter for something really boring related to foreign exchange remeasurement of their euro-denominated debt. It was a one-off accounting thing, but it fooled a lot of people initially. What really matters are the underlying operating profits. And here Netflix made $550 million when the analysts were only expecting $422 million. Much better than expected. On top of that, the company generated $444 million in operating cash flow, along with $332 million in free cash flow, FCF. In some ways, that's a cleaner measure of profitability than the actual earnings. Those positive cash flow numbers were huge because Wall Street expected them to become in negative. Instead of burning cash, though, Netflix has become, yes, a cash machine. Of course, what everyone focused on were the subscriber numbers. Netflix had 7.66 million paid new subscriber additions, more than 3 million higher than what the analysts were looking for, let alone what Netflix itself was forecasting. They use a very traditional method of just kind of trendline forecast. In the letter to shareholders, management said this incredible number was, quote, driven primarily by the success of our Q4 content slate, end quote. And boy, anyone who watched a lot knows that that's absolutely true. Hey,
now, we'll end it there. Now, what the point that Kramer makes that I think also management made when I listened to their earnings call is one of the reasons to be bullish for Netflix, which is that they have dominated when it comes to content, or at least over the past 6 months. You've got things like Wednesday, Stranger Things, a bunch of other titles that I'm missing because I didn't watch them, but they named them on the earnings call. Wednesday is the one that I know about because it just became such a cultural phenomenon. And, you know, if you look at some of the other companies in the streaming space, is HBO creating cultural phenomena? Is Paramount doing it? Is Peacock? No. Not necessarily. And so the question then becomes, okay, so if Netflix is able to continue to dominate in terms of the content they are producing, do the numbers actually matter? Netflix has a price to book ratio of 7. You are paying 94 times for the free cash flow. They have a 94 times price to free cash flow rating, which I would argue is a bit expensive. Now, Disney has 157 times price to free cash flow, which is a bit more expensive, especially because Disney doesn't have the upside that Netflix has in terms of the level of subscriber growth and just like maturity of content. People are not going to watch Snow White all day, and I don't think Disney is actually trying to make attempts to make more diverse content. The parks are not that interesting of a business, so I would always pick Netflix over something like a Disney, but can Netflix sustain the ability to create these types of cultural phenomena? The reason I'm not invested in Netflix, even though the numbers are starting to look a little bit better, I don't think $284 per customer is the best thing in the world, but if you can get the content to keep them, then the lifetime value of that will play out, and that will end up being a profitable subscription. Is because I simply think user-generated content has much more leverage when you think about the content space. When you think about a platform like YouTube that's getting hundreds of millions of videos uploaded every single day, the sheer amount of entertainment and volume that exists on that platform is astronomical. And as a result, I don't think Netflix can compete with that. I think if Netflix added the ability for people to upload their own videos, that would be a game changer, and that would really challenge YouTube. But I don't think Netflix can compete with YouTube. And I think the question becomes, what happens after a couple months when Netflix doesn't create that many good films, that many good movies? And what happens when the cost of creating that stuff is just ridiculously high, where you have to pay way too much money to get these videos, way too much money to get these shows? I am not bullish on the fact that they will be able to create a Squid Game every year. And it's difficult to do that throughout the entire year. Whereas YouTube and the authentic connection people have creators, those people want to upload every single day, which means there's fresh new content every single day, which means consumers have the ability to connect with people every single day. That, to me, is technology scaled. Netflix is media that's trying to scale, and presumably they've done a good job scaling. But at $150 billion market cap, the question is, can this company get to $300 billion? Can it actually double? And I am skeptical that it can double unless they expend massive more amounts of content or on content. And that content has to be attractive enough to consumers to get them into the door for them to actually pay for the service. I'm a bit bearish on it, even though I pay for Netflix. I just don't use it that much, because at the end of the day, there's just not that much content on it versus something like YouTube. So those are my thoughts on Netflix earnings. Overall, numbers weren't bad. 9 million subscribers, good. If you're bullish on the stock, you definitely have a bull case. If you're bearish on the stock because you think they're spending way too much on content and you don't think it's going to ultimately be profitable, you also have a bear case. I personally, philosophically, do not believe that Netflix can compete with some of the user-generated content platforms that exist. And as a result of that, that is my core take for why I think Netflix is not the best stock to be bullish on. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I will see you in the next one. Leave a comment below. Bye-bye.